Hey everybody, Jared Jones. Been a long time since I've given you an update on the housing market. Being a 20-year real estate broker, someone who's worked in multiple markets and sold thousands of REOs, I see some interesting signs going on in this marketplace compared to the last one. And I want to bring up an existing market update. Doesn't matter if you're in the Florida marketplace or if you're in a different market. It's good for any agent to know because I got some predictions about what's going to happen to real estate agents the next 2 years. But also, if you own or looking to buy in the Central Florida market, or any market for that matter, I'm going to give you some tips on what to do in a shifting market. Most of my updates in the past were about marketplaces where people were literally giving their firstborn away to get an offer accepted. Seeing 70 to 90 showings in a 3-day period to have one house see 30 to 40 offers on it, right? This has been the marketplace of the past year. It's been vertical month after month on average home price. So the prices were going straight up for so long. And honestly, I just didn't feel the need to come back and report about it. I'd say for a year now, I've been really concerned about the equal and opposite effect going on with it. So it's running so hot. Could the easy credit, and I should say not so much as a qualification credit, you know, some people, when they hear easy credit, they think, well, Jared, we're not giving away risky loans. We're not, but we have, artificially deflated interest rates, and we also have a lot of money that's floating into the economy that's being pushed in from the Fed. It's also being pushed in through government programs. All of that creates an increase in the value of everything. You have the everything bubble, you have crypto crashing, you have the stock market, already in correction. The only asset class that hasn't really seen its share of that is the housing market. So understand this, in housing too will not reset at the same pace of the stock market or crypto. That's one thing that's paramount to understand, is that real estate has never turned on a dime. It didn't turn on a dime in 2008. So when we had the market, kind of correct, it started to slow down in 2006, 2007. Those of us that were in the market even before the REO showed up, the short sale showed up, it took 2 years just for the train to stop running uphill at such a high pace. It had to stop on the hill and then start to drift back. So correction can be a long time in the future. So that's very important to understand when you're trying to read the market and its shifting changes. Nationwide, in the last 3 months, housing starts have started to pitch downward. That's how many planned projects, single family units, condo units, spots for people to live. We're seeing those numbers are starting to dwindle, okay? Now, they're not major numbers, but they're single digits, 7, 8%. They're off projection, okay? Remember, I was telling you conjectures, hey, we're projecting it's gonna go this way. Well, it's changing, okay? So people are actually pulling back on projects. Now, there's easily, even without interest rates, we know interest rates a problem, right? There's still labor shortages, there's been labor shortages, but we still have inflation messing with not only the cost of things, making it hard for a builder to budget their project and plan on budget, which makes it difficult, right? If you can't figure out you're gonna make a profit, you may not try. But also you've got the supply chain of things, windows, incredibly hard to get on time. All those types of things, builders are seeing so many hurdles, but more importantly, what's happening now is builders over the last 3 months, since interest rates really started to pass even 5.5, is the backlog of builder homes has started to stack up, okay? So you have this situation where interest rates went so high so fast that the builders went from having very little for sale to the sheets growing massively. Give you an example. 3 months back, particularly like February, March timeframe, you would have one of the largest national builders, I'm not mentioning their name on the video, they sent out their inventory sheet for West Orlando, okay? This is not all of Orlando. This is the counties on the west side of the Orlando metro area. They would have one sheet, maybe one sheet of available homes that you could actually purchase, and then a half or a sheet behind it, which is full of offers, okay? There's homes on that list, but they had minimum one offer, if not 2, 3, 4, 5 offers. So even new construction, they were getting multiple offers. Now, that same builder is putting out inventory sheets that are 6 sheets deep plus. When I say sheets, it's a whole page with one line item, like a spreadsheet representing one home. And you got literally pages and pages where we had no inventory months ago, just literally 3, 4 months back. Even coming up till April and coming into early May, you had double-digit offers coming into early May. And by the end of May, coming into June, you really saw the climate change. So if you had a good-looking home at a reasonable price, meaning you priced it on what they've been selling for 3, 4 months ago, you would expect that to be bombarded with 60 to anywhere from 60 to 100 showings in a 3-day period, with double digit offers, 10, 15, 20, 30, a large percentage of all those massive amounts of showings producing offers. Now you have, it'll be on the market for a week and you have maybe 5 to 10 showings. And then a week later, maybe 5 more, 7 more. And then you might, if you're lucky and everything times right, you see 1, 2, 3 offers, okay? Now, the interesting thing about those 1 to 2, 3 offers, they have all kinds of weird contingencies that we hadn't seen over a year and a half. So in the last year and a half, if you had a home to sell before you went and tried to buy one, you never got accepted. Now, I have one house that we hit the market with a month ago, priced it right on the comps, pretty good shape. The 2 buyers that we got, both buyers on that made their first 2 offers, had the buyer says, I got to sell my house to buy yours. I got a contingency on the sale of my house. Then I've got a buyer buying my house already, but then the buyer's house that's buying mine has a contingency on theirs. Both offers had 3 chains deep. Makes sense? So you have multiple people that have to all line up and close. And why is that happening? Because the market pace is slowing down. This guy's house didn't sell as fast as he thought it would. The one down behind that, also in the same boat, creates more risk, not the same deal, not the same marketplace. And the interesting thing is, when you look at all this is really, really, really what's very unique, and no one's talking about this, is people will come out and say, well, we're like in a normal market now, right? You could put a house on the market and it'll sit there for a minute. The builders have homes to sell. But here's the difference. But the last time I looked in Orlando, they had maybe 3 to 4 weeks of inventory, okay? That means if we stop listing homes, 3 to 4 weeks, you'll run out of houses to sell. I've never seen any marketplace where you're running a few weeks of inventory and homes aren't flying, right? So when people say, well, it's kind of like a normal market, you have price reductions. Yeah, but those marketplaces have 5 and 6 months worth of inventory on them when they're moving at that pace. And the reality is how in the world do you have a marketplace with literally very little to sell still? And then the homes are now just kind of not moving at the same pace and actually kind of sludging through. It's not common to see a search. You have maybe 10 homes in the search, not a lot of homes in there. And half of them have price reductions now. They're reducing price to get the thing sold. The interesting thing is, when you look at all this is really, really, really what's very unique, and no one's talking about this, is people will come out and say, well, we're like in a normal market now, right? You could put a house on the market and it'll sit there for a minute. The builders have homes to sell. But here's the difference. But the last time I looked in Orlando, they had maybe 3 to 4 weeks of inventory. Okay, that means if we stop listing homes, 3 to 4 weeks, you'll run out of houses to sell. I've never seen any marketplace where you're running a few weeks of inventory and homes aren't flying, right? So when people say, well, it's kind of like a normal market, you have price reductions. Yeah, but those marketplaces have 5 and 6 months worth of inventory on them when they're moving at that pace. And the reality is how in the world do you have a marketplace with literally very little to sell still? And then the homes are now just kind of not moving at the same pace and actually kind of sludging through. It's not common to see a search. You have maybe 10 homes in the search, not a lot of homes in there. And half of them have price reductions now. They're reducing price to get the thing sold. So ultimately what we're seeing is that you had a marketplace for the last year and a half with very little supply, and opposite of that, very, very high demand. Many, many, many buyers. So think about it. You have a few supply of homes, many people waiting in the wings, like literally just ready to pounce on something all at the same time, like a pack of hungry dogs, right? And now you still have very few homes, but the pack of dogs is also a tiny little pack. You have very, very low supply and very low demand at the same exact time right now. So ultimately the agents and the pundits and some economists that say this time it's different, okay? The marketplace can't possibly price correct too dramatically because supply is severely low, okay? But here's the thing, okay? What can change supply and what can change supply chain quickly? Those are the risks to the marketplace. And when you think about the fact that there is low supply, renting is still record highs, particularly in Central Florida. The reality is, if you have a challenge in the marketplace where recession really starts to anchor in, Okay. One of my biggest concerns is what will change the marketplace further. Okay. The Fed is still not getting a handle on the inflation, right? It shouldn't be a real shock to anybody, by the way. It's like, wow, they've really adjusted interest rates. Well, in the past, when the Fed went to fight inflation, they did much higher increases than what we're seeing now. These are little drops in the bucket. Like the economists that are watching this, if you watch economists with time on them, they're looking at this early on going, they're doing something, but this is like a fire out of control and you're like bringing a tiny little bucket of water with these little interest rate increases. So we're not doing enough. The interest rates are still climbing, and yet we have most likely, because the inflation is not getting under control, a trajectory of higher and higher interest rates, okay? So what we're seeing in Central Florida, and this is probably very, much similar throughout the country, is that the people that are still firing bullets at these houses, these last few buyers that are still in the marketplace, who are they? They're buyers with cash. Okay, I'm seeing them. The ones that are coming and still placing offers on our properties, they're ones with cash. We've seen the hedge funds backing up a little bit. I've seen hedge funds canceling contracts because I saw one particular hedge fund that had 50 offers accepted. They're buying and buying and buying. They had a wave of 50 offers come out and get accepted, which was hard to do back in April. And they walked away on nearly all of them. They lost like $150,000 in earnest money deposits, just left them on the table. You're seeing these interest rates, obviously a lot of the hedge funds, a lot of the funds in general, corporate buyers, let's say, those people are using leverage. So whenever the interest rates start growing, then the marketplace starts increasing rate of interest even for corporate investors that are buying these homes and levering them with financing. That's messing up the ROI. Okay, even with these record high rents, it's changing things. So those buyers that were institutional, that were making all this noise, BlackRock's buying up everything and all these, you got to understand, a lot of them are leveraging, okay? What they're not leveraging, they're getting from the marketplace in terms of investment, right? Like how much more investment are we going to get on housing through REITs and all these people that want to back companies to buy more houses? How much more investment is going to come if they think that there's potential capital loss through deflation of the housing market? Like there's a point where people are just, it's like common consensus. They see it on every news channel that the housing market may be backing away. It might be coming down. It's definitely resetting. It's balancing. And so that kind of money just chills out and waits. Most of the offers that we're getting, however, right now are people coming out of another house. They're coming from somewhere else, right? Because who in the world is going to sell their house at $300,000 and say they want to move up to $400,000? They're selling a house that had a better interest rate at $300,000 to go to a $400,000 interest rate that might be 1 or 2% higher. I mean, getting the extra pool now, like let's say you're selling from 300 to 400 or 400 to 500 to get a pool, you get a soured interest rate, and then the pool ends up costing you what, $1,000 a month more or $1,500 a month more in mortgage payment because you jumped in payment to get some better set up house. I mean, a lot of people, if you look at it honestly, you think that the marketplace is probably going to see an increase in, maybe some remodeling and things of that nature. But even that is going to be tricky because, remodeling has its own cost. Cash out refinances, right? People borrowing out of their equity to fix the house they live in and add the pool is coming at higher terms. So we're seeing cash out refinances just like boom, they're just going down and they're losing steam. The reason why the buyer demand disappeared is because you had all these people that, let's say they were trying to buy for the last year. Because this is what happened. When you're in a pack of 50 buyers trying to buy the same house, you got pre-approved a year ago and you tried and tried and tried again, and a year went by and you didn't buy anything. Then all of a sudden the interest rate goes up like 3 percentage points, 3 in some cases 4% over months of time, okay? So like you had a 3%, a 3.5% go to 6.5%. That affected the housing market by $600 a month. The average 20% down buyer is now paying $600 more a month for the same property, okay? $600 a month, by the way, in buying power is $100,000, okay? So the interest rate change in that scenario is $100,000 of buying power. So if you were maxed out, that lender said you have a $400,000 pre-approval to buy a house, that new interest rate could be given to you, and then you're like, oh, you're now at $300,000. Now think about that. You've tried to buy for a year, and $400,000 has that doesn't even buy anything anymore in your mind. You're like psychologically, man, I've been trying for a year. A year ago, I could have got a pool and a 1,500 square foot house. Now I can only get a 1,400 square foot house with no pool for $400,000. And then the lender says, by the way, you get to buy $100,000 less to qualify. That brought a ton of people out of the market. And a lot of real estate agents, a lot of professionals saying, well, you know what? It's just sticker shock. They're going to step back, they're going to calibrate, and they're going to come back. And if you're paying attention to the marketplace right now, the Fed is not getting a handle on inflation. That means people are struggling to buy food, to put gas in their car, and to pay their mortgage or their rent, okay? You have a lot of major companies, the banks, particularly Bank of America, just recently came back and adjusted their GDP outlook, saying we're going into recession. It's going to be negative numbers, okay? So if the Fed is increasing the cost of things and the bubbles are popping, you got to understand what happens to an economy in that. Let's be honest with ourselves. Do people get more jobs? Do they get more raises? Do they get more advancement? Or does the company start cutting and laying people off? And we're already seeing the layoffs coming. So the reality is, if people start to have challenges in paying for their mortgages, then what is going to happen? It's going to drive them to sell their home, okay? The other thing too is if people start to get very nervous about the future of their livelihood and they feel like they're too house poor, they feel like the house is obligating too much of their own money, and they know most of their financial wealth is tied up into their house, they might do what? They're going to cash in. They're going to sell, which in reality, my view, okay, my professional view is that the next wave of housing supply comes from builders reducing prices to sell, okay? That's gonna happen. Builders will not get stuck on property. The second thing is I think you're gonna continue to see housing starts diminish, okay? Great, that means there are gonna be less houses that are sitting without buyers because buyer demand is super low. We don't need a ton of houses right now. Here it is. But the next thing is you're gonna have some circumstances where people that have really bought in high at the very end and we start to see some receding of the marketplace. I mean, I'm telling you folks, some of these areas went up way too fast. I've seen markets in Florida that these properties were like 180 a year and a half ago that are in the mid threes now, okay? So all of a sudden buyers disappear. People have to sell in those communities. Some of those people, like the builders, can afford to come down from 300 to 260. Well, your neighbor paid 310 5 months ago and now can't afford to hold the place. Do they all lease them out? Do they say to themselves, like I bought in pretty high, I need to get as much cash out of this as I can, I'm in financial trouble. And in some cases, they don't have any outlook but to short sell the property. What I think you're gonna see by the third quarter of 2023 is certain areas that were less appealing. You're gonna start to see short sales in those areas. If recession still becomes more of a factor going forward, we have negative GDP numbers, we have more Fed interest rate hikes, you're gonna see more defaults, which by the way, they're record low right now. Most people are not in default. Most people have equity in their home. And I would say nearly no one is in a negative equity position right now. But when you have no demand and you have potential for supply increases, it's easy for prices to roll back. If demand starts coming down, it has an impact on prices. Obviously, the fact is right now, there's not a lot of supply. That's the good news, is there's not a lot of supply to affect the fact there's low demand. But what happens next? Like if you're reading what's going on, then we will see some distressed property. I think you will see short sales in the coming quarters, not around the corner, but I think by late summer, fall of 23, we'll see a lot of short sales in some spots, and we'll kind of move on. There's really some points I want to make about active inventory because it is changing, okay? It's still low, but supply is changing in Florida and it's changing throughout the country. 20% increase recently, okay? It is on the rise. It's almost like pricing was. Active inventory is just climbing, okay? So all these arguments about supply just isn't there. Well, we still have a ways to go to actually have a supply problem, but it's moving in that direction, okay? But for now, thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel if you're watching us on YouTube. Hit the like button on this video. Please share it with somebody if you think you find value. We'll talk to you real soon.